Krasue is a problem. Normally I'd be grinding away doing a chapter overview and giving my initial thoughts on the content as well as describing the perks and how you could be using them. But I've come to a realization about our newest killer. She, or it, is overtuned as all hell, with very little to no real counterplay. During the PTB I could have easily said that she was strong, but required a bit of a learning curve to master. This is no longer the case. Since her inception in the PTB, she has had quite a few micro buffs, which has easily turned her from a low A tier killer straight to the top. Arguably, she is currently on par with Blight, or even someone like Spirit, but with far more utility. She fundamentally ignores a lot of the Survivor rulebook. Loops that were once considered safe or 50-50 are now arguably worse off when you're going against Krasue. And while yes, she is an anti-loop killer, she also has enough in her kit to constantly keep up pressure. The biggest problem with her is that she's too easy to get value from. It takes very little input from the killer side to actually gain pressure or injures or even downs, and she leaves very little room for counterplay or even just kind of a way to play against her. Meaning, she's an easy to play killer with a lot of upside and not a lot of downside. Her weaknesses or counter pressure can be reapplied instantly without very much input. Let me break it down. Krasue has two forms that she can switch to at ease, with very little to no cooldown between them. I think the total cooldown is roughly 3 or 4 seconds. Her first form is basically a standard M1 killer, but with the caveat that you can fire a projectile that if it hits a survivor, they instantly become leeched, which is her whole status effect thing she's got going on. Leeching a survivor is easy and essentially required for Krasue to snowball. When a survivor is leeched, they are vulnerable to her second form, which is a massive step up in terms of power scaling. Her second form is where things get particularly problematic. In this form, she's in third person firstly, which is its own problem, but she also gains the ability to leap and whip somebody with an M1 attack, which has a crazy range. You'll see it right now. This leap only does damage if the survivor is already in the final stages of being leeched. The whip itself only does 1/3 of a leech to a healthy survivor who isn't leeched, but the projectile itself instantly leeches somebody. And like I said, she can switch between the two forms, so it's very little cooldown to try and actually shoot this. She also has increased movement that she can use when she's in this form with her right click or M2. This essentially allows her a lot of map pressure and mobility and honestly chase pressure as well, and it has a staggeringly long use time. It does have a long cooldown, but if you're constantly switching between forms to leech survivors, it's really not a problem. And finally, while she's in this form, she can vault windows and pallets that have been dropped. Pretty quickly too. The only real counter to this leeching is a new item that survivors can find around the map when they're versing Krasue, which is this fungus they can eat, which gradually reduces the leeching effect over time. It's not instant. Like Nemesis or Wesker, it's not instant. It takes time. And if Krasue finds you during that time where you're on that cooldown, gradually restoring from the leeching effect, she can instantly reapply it. So all of that time that you spent to go collect it, eat it, consume it, is just wasted because she can just instantly reapply that with her projectile, or even just whipping you in her second form because you're technically still infected. It's ridiculous. Even if you're healthy, you still wind up losing the health state because you're infected. Now, you might already start to see the problem here, but if not, I'll try and break it down in the best way I can. I'm going on a tangent here. This is the first time I've ever done a video like this. In any given chase, a survivor usually has a handful of options given to them in order to extend the chase. Whether that be greeting the pallet to extend the loop, mind gaming the killer with 50-50s, or pre-dropping a pallet for distance. There's always sort of something you can do to extend the chase. Except a lot of these don't apply to Krasue. Mind gaming is easier for her to do than a normal killer because she has that third-person camera. I told you we would talk about it. Similar to Chucky. So she could be facing one direction, hiding her killer stain, and still easily see what you're trying to do. Greeting the pallet also doesn't work because Krasue can just fake the commit and vault over the second it's dropped. And pre-dropping for distance isn't a thing because of her mobility and catch-up potential. So arguably your best shot is to hug a loop tightly. But if that loop is longer than 20 centimeters, you're going to take the hit because of her insanely long lunge distance and speed. The fact that she can vault over a pallet and cut off a loop very quickly, you're taking that hit. Alternatively, you could try and greed a vault and just run it for as long as you can. Unless, of course, the killer brings a perk like Bamboozle, then you're just out of luck. You can't really do anything there. The idea here is that you want to prevent Krasue from ever getting you in a leeched state, or delay the leeching for as long as possible. That way she just stays a simple M1 killer trying to hit you with a projectile. But that isn't really counterplay either. because Krasue has a very small cooldown for her projectile. Like a couple of seconds. It's 2 seconds. She also doesn't really lose speed while holding the projectile or a penalty for missing, and it also has a slight auto lock to it. Yeah, making it very difficult to miss. Once I learned that, I stopped trying to lead my shots like I was playing unknown, and it just worked. Like, it just automatically locked on about 90% of the time. She also has a much better third-person camera than Chucky, which I said before, giving her just an ungodly amount of information when trying to, like, hug a loop, or, just hug a loop, or, like, chase you down. Not to mention, if she gets close to you, she can hit you with the leech projectile and immediately hit you less than half a second later. This is what that looks like in action. So she can hit you with a leech, take a health state, switch to her form, and run you down all in about 5-10 seconds. She has an insane chase potential. So what are the real options for counterplay against a killer with high mobility, anti-loop potential, and insane catch-up speed? Gen rushing. No, I'm not kidding. I'm fucking serious. It really is that simple. The only games I really lost is where there were multiple survivors using builds like Build to Last, Hyper Focus, Stakeout, and Bardic Inspiration. Your best shot to actually win as a survivor is to pop gens as quickly as possible. Seriously, I know that sounds dumb and simple, but that's kind of the only counterplay you have to her. The longer that the match goes on for, the stronger that she becomes, because resources to counter the leeching become more scarce or hidden off in corners or too time-consuming to go for. Because every second you're gunning down for one of those funguses is another second you could be unhooking or healing or doing a gen. The thing is, she's really new, right? I get that. She's a new character. Players haven't had the time to really show the counterplay on the survivor side, but the opposite is true as well. Killers haven't had the potential to realize her full kit yet, or how to play her as effectively as possible. So you've got this conundrum where people don't know how to play against her just yet, but you also have killers that don't know how to use her properly yet. And honestly, she's too easy to use that once people start to get good at her, she's going to become a bit of a problem. And you might say, well, Blazo, doesn't that mean that survivors will also adapt and get better at playing the game so that they could avoid Krasue? And I would reply, well, don't be a fucking silly Billy. Because some of the best players and content creators in the world had already expressed concerns about how strong she was during the PTB, let alone how strong she is now after the micro buffs. I do fear the state of killer powers lately. When strong killers like Krasue get released, the balance of the game gets impacted in a negative way. Changes and balances to perks and other game mechanics get considered based on the performance of higher tier killers, not the lower tier killers. It's exactly why perks like Pain Res were nerfed into the token system. It's not because Ghostface was affecting the balance of the game with the perk, it was because killers like Nurse and Blight could get far more value out of that perk than Ghostface ever could. And because they were so much stronger on those killers, the perk had to be nerfed to match their potential. Not a killer like Ghostface, for example. Now, I don't know what the exact answer to balance is. It could involve maybe a class system where higher tier killers with extremely powerful abilities are limited from certain perks. I don't know. Okay, I'm not game design. All I know is, right now, as of this video going live, Krasue is a very strong killer. She has very little counterplay and has a rewarding playstyle with very little player input. I don't know if nerfs are the right answer, but as it stands right now, she's obnoxious to play against. But the last thing that I want for her is to get the Skull Merchant treatment and she just gets gutted completely. She's a lot of fun to play and a different playstyle to what we're used to, but she's also just too strong in her current state. There's very little downside to her making any kind of mistake. Distance against her isn't really a thing. The fungus that survivors use against her isn't an instant fix, so using it prior to a chase is essentially useless if she already sees you or knows where you are. She's just a little too overtuned and needs to be more punished for the mistakes that she makes. If she misses a projectile, there needs to be a longer cooldown on that or something. I don't know. Look, I know it's essentially day one, but it doesn't take a long time for anyone to realize there's a problem with this. It's a common trend lately where newer killers just have so much in their kit that older killers, in comparison, just look boring. Anyway, I know I've gone on a bit of a tangent here, and it's not really in line with what I would normally post. I'll still be doing my chapter review and all of that. I will get that out sometime in the next week or so. But I just wanted to get my thoughts on this killer out because, Jesus Christ, it has been a long, long day. Anyway, here we are. Like I said, bit of a tangent, but yeah, I'll get that video out. I got the Borderlands one coming out soon, so yeah, like and subscribe, keep an eye out for that, and all of that jazz to feed the almighty YouTube algorithm. But I'm done. Take care. I love you all. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.